I guess we can say to start starting because they say that even the beginning has parts.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be the beginning of the start. And I made co-host to you, Adam, and
Cool.
to Gina as well, in case I don't know. I guess you can accept people if more people log in. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming back. Let me last thing before it's gonna. Thank you. Approve. Right, cool. Thanks for being here. And really, it's not, I mean, yes, of course, it's that you're here, but in a way, I will say really thank you because for your interest to destroy suffering forever, like
Yeah.
why other reason people will come and we will be doing this. It's like, I think it's so beautiful and cool when, uh, I don't know, we engage in whatever better, whatever our mind tells us that is the next step in order to achieve that beautiful, beautiful goal, beautiful dream. So let's just take a few moments just before we start to bring to our minds whatever our best understanding on how reality works. And with that, kind of taking refuge in that if we figure it out, if we really crack it, we will be much more capable to do something about it. So let's just take a moment for bringing that understanding into our minds, and at the same time the motivation. What do we want to do with that, with the wisdom that we have and the wisdom we want to achieve? And as well, you can imagine like a perfect world, the perfect reality for you and everybody, and offer that. Okay, so yeah, no, really thank you because it's beautiful. It's like, I don't know, we are all working towards a common goal. And I remember a few years ago, I was joking with some of my friends, like, we were kind of just joking that sometimes we were saying that we will get jealous if another friend of us or another student will seem to know more or be more advanced or have involved in better projects or whatever. But then we were saying like, but it's good because if any of us, if anybody really reaches the goal before us, it's good because then we will have extra help, you know.
Yeah.
Eh, like angels or enlightened beings, they promise they will help everyone, so they are gonna help us. It's not a competition, it's like a cooperation. And also, using logic, we will have one less person to save, so less work for us. They'll help us, we don't have to help them anymore. Great. All right, so uh let me see. I'm just adjusting. Okay, I think Adam has do you have a spotlight in your screen or something like that?
uh,
Because
for
once
myself,
when I click a speaker, I only see you, although we are quiet. So I have to adjust it for me to gallery. Unless, let me see, then I'll try to spotlight. I'm gonna spotlight, but if you want to spotlight somebody else, audience, you can. But I'm gonna spotlight me because I'm gonna open the first section. Okay. I thought I learned from last session the lesson to time goes quickly. So just to start fast.
Yeah.
But apparently, no, I already spent 6 minutes. Okay, cool. Let's move on because really today I want to start with the debates, the how to say the lost promise of the debates, but today is not gonna be lost, hopefully. So I'm just gonna move quickly and do a review, a few new topics, and move on to debates. And at let's say if it's 6:21 in Arizona time, when we reach 6:50, 6:52 Arizona time, we'll pass the torch to Adam. Just to keep track. Okay. Let's see. Opening my. Okay. No, that happens often and I don't know why, but anyways, here we are. All right. Pramana, right? We were talking last class a little bit of the etymology because, it's like, I like this idea that there are different ways, different doors of information for understanding objects and reality. One of the ways, one of the ways to understand Pramana, it's through the etymology, the meaning of the words. In this case, pra means forward. It's like a Sanskrit root. And ma, it's the root that comes, for example, in measure. So it's like learning. Pramana is the art, I will say, of learning how to establish reality, how to measure something and ascertain it, to almost, I will say, to be able to point at something and correctly understand it in a way you can say like you're measuring, but in this case it means kind of establishing, defining it, grasp it. So it's like, I will say, it's the art of measuring something well, grabbing something well. Okay. All right. And this is basically what we are trying to do here in these sessions. We are trying to understand reality well. Why? Because once we do that, we're going to be able to design it better. We will be able to, it's like the better you understand how a machine operates, the more wonderful things you're going to be able to do with it. So, what is the main idea that we want to do with it? We want to go to paradise, really. We were talking last time about Yoga Chitta Virti Nirodha. It's one of the most famous and important lines of the Yoga Sutra of Master Patanjali. And it means yoga, like in this part of the Yoga Sutra, when we are going through the definition of yoga, it says yoga is stopping how the mind turns things around. In this case, in the Pramana context, turning things around means seeing them as coming at us. And it's just a natural tendency we as humans have. Like if you were born as a human, your mind is going to have this tendency of, you didn't do much. I mean, you were born that way. Everything seems to be coming at us. And then, by the great kindness of our teachers and by the great kindness of our virtue and merit, we have the great fortune to hear a new idea that says, hey, have you noticed that it actually makes more sense only after like a flow of steps of logical proofs that things actually maybe not coming at you, but maybe coming from you. And, you know, one of the ways to do it is, of course, with the pen. It's like a logical step-by-step flow that proves why the things we see and how we perceive them is depending on us. One of the participants not too long ago was asking me some questions about perception as well. And I want to encourage everybody here, if you guys have questions, also reach out to me and Adam or put them in the chat. We're going to try as well to open up some space for you to ask questions, because even if sometimes we cannot answer them right now, right here, but we can think about them, and then also we can design some content for future sessions based on your questions. We will know where you're at or where you want to move forward, you know. So sharing your question is a great contribution for the sessions. Anyways, we were talking about Pramana. It's because really at the end of the day, we're going to stop this misperception, this misunderstanding. And once we do that, we'll have like really the how is it called? It's a great word in English. The bandwidth. We'll have the bandwidth to really do something about it. We'll have the power basically to really do something if we stop the misunderstanding. And sometimes I wonder really, what's the goal of all that we're doing? In a way, at the end of the day, I just think it's as simple as we just want to go to paradise. We want to live in a continuous state of total happiness, wisdom, love, beauty, happiness for us and everybody else. So as far as I understand, that's the goal. Okay, and just as a quick review, in these sessions, it's going to be very important through the whole sessions that constantly you keep asking yourself, what school are we talking about? You know, there are like 4 main schools of thought. Then later with time, I learned that there are actually like in between minor schools that are combinations of these 4, like propensities and tendencies. So you can have like new small proposals of certain combination, but in general, we can say there are 4 main schools. And of course, you know, like the biggest subdivision is like the 4th school, which is Madhyamika, divides into 2, Swatantrika and Prasangika. Swatantrika is called the independent school, and Prasangika, how are we going to call it? Sometimes it's called the implication school. Some other times it's also called the sarcasm school. Mm-hmm. Prasangika, actually, that's what it means, like some sarcasm or like some implication statement that you say. Classic, whatever example will be like easy, like, oh, I don't know, all fruits are oranges. And then I would say, oh, so I guess bananas are oranges, right? Mm-hmm. Easy, just very straightforward thing. But what's the reason I mentioned this up? Because in general, not only in Pramana, I think in general, in the study of philosophy, especially like this Dharma philosophy, I think it's extremely helpful to constantly be checking what school are we talking about. And remember that although many times the highest schools may not agree with some ideas of the lower schools, many times, I almost will say the vast majority of times, the highest schools will agree with most of the ideas that the lower schools propose as well. In general, I see it more that they build up upon each other, It's like steps that you're taking in general. So not because an idea is from a lower school necessarily means that it's not accepted by the highest schools. But some of them are. Some of them are rejected by the high schools. So it's important for us to know the schools very well. Of course, it's a process. We'll do that little by little, but just keep asking yourselves. Sometimes we will find some ideas that may trouble us, maybe, and keep asking yourself, try to answer this question. Okay, but what school is this? Why I mention this mostly is because it's a very important topic in Pramana, and I like it very much. Just think about the difference of what's a valid perception versus a correct perception. As far as I understand right now, one of the biggest difference is this. A valid perception, and both could be used as a translation of Pramana, either valid perception or correct perception. But as I understand so far, and that's like my life insurance, because if I do some mistakes, I'm very willing to later learn more. And if you also hear that I'm saying things that don't make sense, I think I'll be very grateful that you're like, hey, but what about this and stuff? And we can talk about it. And we grow together, I guess, as a group. That's great. Valid perception, I'll be bold and say that it's used mostly when we are talking about the second school, which many say is like the Dharmakirti school mostly. Although we have heard that Dharmakirti then later also has a lot of materials and approaches to the mind-only school, but we can say mostly what he wrote is based on the second school. I think it's called Svatantrika. It's similar to Sautrantika, but yeah, one is Madhyamika, Sautantrika, and the other one, the second school of logic is Svatantrika.
Yeah. Sautrantika is second, right?
Correct. Sautrantika. Okay. So why is this distinction about valid and correct? Because now that we're studying Pramana, we'll say this. It's like, if I say, do I have a pen in my hand? And you are seeing a pen. You can say, yes, I see a pen. You have a pen in your hand. In a way, I will say, all right, this is a correct perception. But the distinction is that although it's true and it's in a way correct that I have a pen in my hand and you are seeing a pen in my hand, the difference is like you are seeing, in general, I would say you are seeing a self-existent pen. So it's valid, but it's not correct. Have you heard this idea that before you see emptiness directly, all the perceptions you had in your life are incorrect? Not because this is not a pen. That part is correct. Therefore, we can call it valid. So the part that you are seeing a pen is valid. It functions, it works in general in the world, but deeply, truly is still an incorrect perception because yet it's not comprehending the object that it's seeing. It's not understanding how it exists. We are perceiving it through an illusion or confusion. It's what many times is referred as Maya in Sanskrit. So I will say that when we are talking about correct perception, it's when we are mostly speaking about the Madhyamika Prasangika point of view. When you are perceiving an object, and not only that, but you are perceiving or having a deep, correct understanding understanding of its reality and how it works. And then finally, you are seeing a real object, because this pen does exist. I mean, the pen exists. The self-existent pen doesn't exist. The pen that comes through dependent origination does exist. So it's like we are not talking only about the pen, which in that case I will say is the valid perception. Pen is valid. The dependent origination pen is correct. Just try to think about those two distinctions.
I always thought it was funny that the pen is also dependently originated.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. And just through the content, keep chewing on it and keep trying to identify what are we talking about. But learning very well the second school is the platform, or like the trampoline, that's gonna propulse us to the highest school. So we have to learn them there. Okay, now we're gonna talk really quickly about, we just talked about Pramana. Now we're gonna talk about Apramana. And in 5 more minutes, I'm gonna jump to the debates. Apramana. Is a suffix it's a prefix in Sanskrit that if it's a short A, it marks or indicates a negative. Geshe often says the example of Ananda, one of the disciples of Shakyamuni. If he says that if we say Ananda means unhappy, but if we say Ananda, long A, it means very happy. So in this case, what do you think how do you think we should pronounce it? Apramana or Apramana? I don't know if you hear the difference. Apramana or Apramana? Yes, short A. Because it's canceling the Pramana. What are 3 elements, just for us to know? And by the way, here mostly we are seeing content of the second school right now. But remember, many of this content is also accepted by the highest schools. So just to move on slightly quicker through these things before we go to the debate. Physical obstructions, no much trouble with that. It's like there is a lot of dust obstructing your senses. That can be a cause for apramana. This is an example. You cannot see very well the color of the motorcycle because there is a lot of dust. And you thought the motorcycle was orange, but then when there is no dust, you can see that the color is red. Just an example. So an obstruction or an interference with your senses cause you an apramana. Another famous apramana is intoxicants, alcohol or other intoxicants, hallucinations and stuff that are also messing with your senses, for example, or with your mind. And another one, which I find very interesting, is intense negative emotions. Here's the picture of this lady. She likes the guy over there, but then she sees him with another lady, and she's already so upset because he is and thinking like, now, I don't know, making big problem in her mind and judging him because he's, I don't know, whatever story. And then later she realizes that that was his sister that came to visit. But she was already, because of her jealousy and negative emotions, she was already making whole stories, distortion stories in her mind. Sometimes it can happen. 3 kinds of pramana. Direct perception is like the one that mostly involves our senses, mostly the 5 senses, I will say. you hear something, you see something, it's very straightforward. It's a fresh, direct perception of an object. It doesn't involve much conceptual thought necessarily. And what else? It's kind of very spontaneous. Like it's like looking at this, I don't know, at the sunset, and just you recognize that there are colors and shapes, direct perception. You see the colors, you see the shapes. What else? Anumana is like a logical deduction. Sometimes it's called also inferential cognition. Geshe many times refers to it as kind of somehow kind of developing a third eye, the third eye of logic, when you can deduce things. And the reason I put these cables here is because a few months ago I was at Peachtree Cafe and I was sitting down with Geshe, and Geshe showed me a picture of Time magazines. And he said, look, some people find out some underwater line communication cables cut down in Europe. And we don't know who was it, but they are suspicious of some government, of the enemy government that cut them out. And then we were laughing and we say like, yeah, well, I guess it's very obvious that sharks didn't do it, right? And then we just laugh and we were like, yeah, well, sharks didn't do it. So this is just the kind of an example, like how by some information, through logical deduction, you can inferential some information, you can infer some information. And we are doing it all the time. Also with the teachings is very important because we learn some parts of it, then we learn other content through our practice and experience, then we put things together. We'll talk about that next time. For example, the proofs of, you know how they say some proofs for finding out if a teaching is true. And one of the classical examples is like you cut it, you burn it, you file it. And it involves all these kind of pramanas in order to establish if a teaching is true or not. Finally, there is another one that is very important, and it's called agama in Sanskrit, lung in West Chinese. And it mostly is like a person you can trust, and you just kind of believe them because you trust them. It's like the authoritative source. An example here that I came up with is when somebody, for example, teaches you about medicine or herbs, and maybe you don't have the time or the knowledge or the whatever skill to test each one of the plants to know what's the effect of each one of them. But because this knowledge has been accumulated over generations and your teacher had a teacher, they taught them, and each person contributes to find out what's the benefit or function of each of the plants. You can learn medicine, for example, through this form of perception, this form of information sharing. There is one more kind of way of pramana, and Adam is going to help us to talk a little bit about that later, but it's called the yogi pratyaksha. It's called the yogic direct perception. And I put this picture because to me, it really involves like a combination of many factors. Even its name, you see, is a direct perception. So in a way, it involves the pratyaksha, the direct perception. But also it involves a lot of mental training in order to develop it. So, for example, they say basically the highest form of yogi pratyaksha is the direct perception of emptiness. But in order to get there, you need a lot of shamatha, you need a lot of vipassana, which vipassana involves a lot of, I will say, logic deduction. You first establish reality, how it works, emptiness. And then with that vipassana, you're going to be able to use it with your shamatha and be able to have this experience of a yogic direct perception. Then I was very interested to realize there are many kinds of objects that this yogi pratyaksha can perceive. But the most important for sure and the highest is the direct perception of emptiness. But sometimes we could say other things like subtle impermanence, certain like perceiving karma, but more like in a direct way, or even some forms of CDs could be considered into this kind of yogic direct perception, forms of clairvoyance, past lives, future lives, maybe. So Adam is gonna talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Okay, so I think for now this is it. I'm gonna leave just a few more minutes because really I wanna do the debate. And then if when you hear about these topics, you start having questions and stuff, write it down, share them with us. With that, we will be able to give you some cool ideas to think about, or you will give them to us. Sometimes really I think it works that way. People ask you a question and then it's like, oh wow, I never thought about it. So you have to figure it out in order to help them. But then actually it's you the one that learns or gets help. Okay, now let's go to the debate. All right. This is the very first debate of the book. I have the book, of course. You can see it. It's a great book. I haven't finished it, but amazing. I really recommend it. Even the introduction is mind-blowing, blow-minding. All right, red and white. Let's start. And in a few more minutes, I'll pass the torch to Ara. Okay. Cachignare. Cadogina, Marpo, Yimpe, Yimpe Kiaf, Serna. Just for good luck. Probably I'm just going to read the English. But suppose someone comes and says the following. Somebody comes. Just imagine a friend of you comes and say, hey, you know what? I was thinking. What? What were you thinking? If something is a color, it's always red. Always red. Now, what I'm going to invite you to is to be, we have to be very flexible when studying Pramana, because in one hand, we have to be able to question everything. Everything we think we know, we have to be able to question. In the other hand, don't get crazy about it. I've been there. It's horrible. Also, you have to trust yourself and try to trust convention, trust reality, because in general it works. It doesn't work well because it keeps us in trouble, but don't get crazy because you're gonna get in worse trouble. So in a way, you can rely on conventions, but at the same time, be flexible. Sometimes learn to question everything. Sometimes learn to relax and and just work in convention reality. But check this out. I'm just gonna give you an example. Even subconsciously here, you check if you agree with this. If something is a color, it's always red. If you take it too deep, we are assuming and accepting without questioning that red is a color. But you ask yourself, is red a color? Is really red a color? And maybe you're, yeah, okay, yes, red is a color. Conventionally speaking, in a functional way, I can say, yes, red is a color. Okay, fine. Then we can proceed. But just think about it, like it could be something else. If something is a color, it is always a glass. All right, so that doesn't match, right? Right away, some alarms will start. But let's for now just start the debate. But I want just to open your mind for this idea, like question everything you think you know, and it's going to help you to establish what you know just because you take it for granted, or what you check, review. Okay, is really red a color? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I check. Okay, we can proceed. Red is a color. Okay. But it's not the case that if something is a color, it's always red. So we proceed. Your friend says this crazy thing, and then you're back with your friend. You say, okay, wait, check this out. Think about the color of a white seashell. I guess it's red. And your friend's like, no, no, why you say that? And you say, well, because the color of a white seashell, it's a color. And your friend says, nah, just because something is a color, it doesn't mean it has to be red. And then you're like, my friend, that's exactly what you just say. You say that it has to be. Then the friend is like, no, 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 wait. No, okay. Sorry. In that case, I disagree. The color of a white seashell is not a color. Then you are like, okay, if you disagree, you have to be very patient, okay? If you disagree, let's consider again the color, okay? The color of a white seashell. It is a color, yes, it is a color. And your friend's like, why? Why do you say that? Why do you say that the color of a white shell, it's a color? And you say, because the color is white. No, your friend says, I don't think it's white. I disagree. It's not white. Okay, then next is, if you disagree that it's white, let's consider again, okay, think about again the color of a white seashell. Guess what? It is white. Yes, it is white. Your friend says, no, no, why do you say the color white of a white seashell is white? Why do you say that? And you say, oh, because the color of a white seashell is identical to the color of a white seashell. Because it's the color white, it's identical to the color of a white seashell. And then the guy say, okay, then I agree with you. Sorry, I got totally confused. Now I'm thinking better. Forget everything that I say. Now I'm thinking better. I actually think that I agree now with the first statement you say. It is red. The color of a white seashell, it's red. And you're okay. Let's start again. Let's again consider the color of a white seashell. It's not red because it's white. Your friend is gonna say, just because something is white, it doesn't mean it cannot be red. And then you say, okay, suppose that it's not necessarily the case. Suppose that you're saying that it's not the case, that just because something is white, it cannot be red. But I'm going to tell you that yes, it has to be that way. It has to be that if something is white, it cannot be red. And remember, here we are talking about totally white and totally red, right? Why? Why I'm saying that? Because it is impossible for one thing to be entirely white and entirely red at the same time. And then this guy is like, no, I disagree. I disagree. It's not true that it's impossible for one thing to be entirely white and entirely red at the same time. And you are, okay, fine. I understand you disagree, but I'm going to show you why it's the case. It is impossible for one thing to be entirely white and entirely red at the same time because being entirely white and being entirely red are two contradictory things. Yay! All right. What I'm going to do Then the debate keeps going, but it's like the version 2 of the debate 1. We can do that next time. But what I would like you to do is like, I'm going to share this first debate as a text in the chat, in Telegram and WhatsApp. And then I invite you to do this exercise of try to see what can you learn from each one of the lines, or at least each one of the paragraphs. You see here are numbers like number 10, number 9. I have done it. Next class we could share a little bit about what do you think each one of them is teaching you. For example, super easy, and it may sound simple, but remember this also training kids in the Geshe University. But it can also train us and to take away this taking for granted mind. In this, for example, number 4, as simple as this, let's consider the color of a white seashell. It's supposed it's red. Why do you say that? Because it's a color. We learned that red is a color. It sounds so simple, right? Because we know that so, how to say, we have known that for so long that we don't even question if red is a color. But you can say, oh, in number 4, we learned that red is a color. And I don't know, in number 6, you learned that, who knows? You can say, like, I learned that in number 6, we learned that the color of a white seashell is white. Little by little, the arguments start getting more complex, but the invitation is like, try to find the hidden treasure in each one of these lines. You will be really surprised, and we can talk about that next session. Okay, for now, I overstep a few minutes. I'm gonna pass the torch to Adam, and thank you so much for hanging in there. I'll share this first debate in the chat, and if you want, if you like, do that exercise. I did it. It's awesome. I recommend it. Okay,
Okay.
Adam, I'll go to you. I'm gonna spotlight you.
Thanks, Juan. That was great, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, am I spotlighted yet?
There.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm on the beach today, obviously. Um, yeah. So, Juan was going through the debate, right? And I wanted to point out that one of the things they do when you're studying at one of the higher uh, institutions in, let's say, Western China, is they ask the new monks to memorize the debates before they come to the debate ground. So it may be helpful moving forward if one can put the debate for the next class, the whatever debates you're going to be covering, in Telegram or WhatsApp, so that if you want to, you could go through and memorize them and kind of familiarize yourself with the debate before you come. So what they do in the monasteries is they ask the new monks to memorize it, and then when they come to class, the debate master will kind of unlock exactly what they mean and what's going through. And so Juan's going to act as our debate master um, from week to week. Uh, yeah, so also memorizing the debates will kind of give you an understanding for how it flows. So one of the things I hope that we're going to cover as we move forward is how do you debate? If you have a debate partner and you wanted to actually practice debate and making arguments with another person in real life, how would you do that? What does it feel like? And what are the different answers you give? Oh, sorry. I gotta slow down. Yeah. Um, yeah. So if you're going to, you don't have to, right? And Juan, yeah, this is, oh yeah. Okay, sorry, I was seeing one of the questions here. Um, yeah, so we're going to go through a few different things as we move forward. And it may seem like we're moving kind of slow, but from week to week, we're going to move through, hopefully making all of you guys experts in the second school. Um, so this is going to be a really thorough look at how to debate. What are the different topics of debate? And then we're also going to look at the classical presentation of the second school's material. So, as Juan was going through the debate, yeah, I just made a couple of notes. That was one of them. It could be helpful to memorize the debates before you come because it'll actually make what Juan's saying a little bit more approachable. And second, it'll give you a feeling for what it's like to actually debate. So, if I say, um, Chudung Karpo Karok Churchen, right? Do you see how it kind of flows when you memorize it? It's a lot easier to kind of go through, and you'll get used to exactly what it feels like to actually debate using your mouth, right? And instead of just thinking about it. So what it actually feels like to go through and work through these debates with another person. Um, yeah, so asked, um, Juan kind of asked or suggested that I give a little bit more context to what yogic direct perception is, right? So one of the things we're going to have to keep in mind is that you cannot reach ultimate enlightenment, okay, without yogic direct perception. It is the tool that you use, right, to see emptiness directly. Okay, so you cannot do it. You will not move through the five paths without yogic direct perception. Um, Yogic direct perception has to be developed in line with what's called nyamshak or samadhi. Okay. So whenever we learn about seeing emptiness directly, you learn that it has to be done using samadhi or single pointed concentration, right? Ting and Zen. Um, and that has to be done with insight. So something you call vipassana, right? Everybody's heard the term vipassana. So yogic direct perception is something that kind of comes out like a seed, right? Of joining the two of single pointed concentration and insight, vipassana. So you got to think really. So we're going to make a distinction here, and I ask that you all, if this doesn't make sense, please ask questions now. I like to. Am I going slow enough, Kanchan? And the other translators, am I? No, still, I need to slow down. Okay. Yeah, I have a super hard time doing this, and it kind of takes me out of my usual flow, but I'll get used to it. So once again, just bear with me, okay? Um, whenever I'm asked to share something that I've learned over the years, um, I don't like saying that I'm teaching anything. I'm not saying anything new. Um, I'm only kind of sharing with you guys what I've learned over 16 years of study now. So one of the things that I find that I do best with when I'm sharing material like this is I like to teach or share things more like a conversation. So if I'm in the room with a small group of people, I like for it to be more of a conversation and less of me just kind of sitting up here and talking. Okay. Um, so I'm about to, I say that because I'm about to make a critical distinction. a very important distinction. And if you want to understand emptiness, and you want to understand how yogic direct perception is used to see things like subtle impermanence or emptiness directly, you have to understand this distinction. So, yogic direct perception, it's not a perception of ultimate reality. Okay, that may seem uh, contradictory, right? So, what we need to understand is that emptiness isn't a thing. Okay, in the classical sense of the term thing, right? Emptiness can be an object, okay? And when we think of the what's called Shidrup Kinamsha, it means the presentation of all existing phenomena, right? So you take things and then you split them into changing and unchanging things. Okay, so if I ask you, where does the category of non-existing things, where does non-existence or non-existing things fit into the two categories of changing and unchanging? And I tell you that that's a trick question. So I'm not going to move on until somebody chimes in here. Yeah, yeah. Juan Vu, yeah, he's on the right track. So if I say where does non-existence fit into unchanging and changing things? If you say Juan, is
Yeah,
that
no, I just thought that a connection can be that non-exist non-existing things. I don't know. Can we say that non-existing things are unchanging?
well, this is the point.
Uh-huh.
If something is a non-existing thing, it can have no qualities.
Okay, okay.
And if I say that something can have no qualities, it cannot have the quality of being unchanging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it doesn't even exist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, so why am I going there? Because the perception of a non-existing thing is the perception of an absence. And the perception of that absence is an unchanging thing.
Wait,
Okay, I told you guys
wait,
this is going to
wait.
be I told
Yeah,
you it's going to be a subtle, it's tricky, right?
yeah.
So if I say, everybody's heard the term gotcha, right? Give me a head nod if you've heard. Gotcha, right? It's the lack of a self-existence to any given thing. Okay. If I say that the gotcha is what? The gotcha is a non-existing thing, right? The gotcha is something that has never existed, does not exist, and will never exist. Okay. So, by definition, the gotcha is a non-existing thing.
Mhm, 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 mhm.
Okay. So, if we go there and we say that yogic direct perception, okay, is going to be used to perceive the absence of a non-existing thing. Okay. Notice what I just said.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay. It's the perception of a non-existing thing. So it's not like you are perceiving a non-existing thing. You are perceiving the absence of a non-existing thing.
mhm,
Okay. And that absence, that perception of that absence is an unchanging thing.
Wait, the perception is unchanging?
Yeah. Well, you could say the absence is unchanging,
Uh-huh. That, yeah, because I
right?
always had the thought like a perception has to be coming. It's funny because I get sometimes trouble. A perception is something that comes from seeds,
Yeah.
But an absence doesn't come from seeds. An absence is the lack of
A
something.
non-existing thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very
So
interesting.
so you see the distinction that I'm making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if we say that um, what separates us from reaching enlightenment is perceiving that absence of a non-existing thing, then what tool are you going to use to perceive that? You're going to use yogic direct perception, right? So the reason that I think this is perfect, one, and I actually didn't really see it until when you were talking earlier, and I made some notes to remind myself to bring this up to you guys, which is what we're doing is we're going to be, as I hope everybody comes from week to week. It makes me so happy if I see people come back because we're going to be building each week. Okay. From week to week, we're going to be going through um, how we perceive reality, and we're going to be building up to what does the Abhidharma school think? What does, or actually today, we're going to start with what do the classical schools that are outside of Buddhism think, right? People like the Charvakas, who are known as the materialists, another ancient Hindu school called the Nyaya, right? And they all have ideas about how they think reality exists that Master Dharmakirti was directly refuting, was directly saying we're incorrect. Okay. So we're talking about yogic direct perception at the moment. Okay. And what I like to think of is I think I gave the analogy last week of being in a dark room, you know, and you have to light these little lamps around the room in order to see everything. Okay. And what what we're going to do is from week to week, we're going to light little lamps to help us see reality a little more clearly, right? Things that are beyond our normal senses. It's like right now we're sitting in a dark room and we do not understand what's in this room. Everything's black. But when we light a little lamp of wisdom, this helps us see the objects in the room a little more clearly, right? And so the process of developing yogic direct perception is the process of lighting little lamps of wisdom along that ladder that Juan was talking about, moving up the schools. Okay. So the schools of Buddhist philosophy can be broken apart by how they see emptiness, right? What do they consider real? What do they consider deceptive? What do they consider ultimate? Okay. So, what separates Abhidharma from Sautrantika is how they see the two truths. Okay. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through how each one of these schools sees reality. Okay. And that is going to ultimately, if you light the biggest lamp of wisdom within your mind, and that is yogic direct perception. Okay. So I had it described to me. If you go back through the Lam Rim teachings, there's a point where Pabanka Rinpoche is describing how you should meditate on the Lam Rim topics. Okay. And you're not supposed to move on from one to the other until you've generated an insight in meditation. on that topic. Okay. So, what does it mean to generate an insight, to create a realization in your mind, right? Everybody has a conceptual understanding of emptiness right now. Everybody has heard Geshe Michael teach the pen. And we all know that he is an absolute master at presenting emptiness. So I remember the first time that I feel like I understood what he was trying to say. And when I left that class, I had an intellectual understanding of what the concept of emptiness is. But we don't want just an intellectual understanding, right? We want to actually see emptiness directly, right? But is emptiness something that you can see? It's not. Emptiness isn't something that you can hear. It's not. It's not something you can smell or taste or touch, right? And within the second school, okay, we usually say that direct perception is just limited to your senses, okay? Your senses are the only thing that perceive reality directly. So I go back now to what Pabonka Rinpoche says in the Lam Rim teachings. And he uses the metaphor of a friction fire. If you have two sticks and a small bundle, right, of wood, and you have to sit there and work at it, don't you? It's not like a lighter that you can just, light a fire with. You have to take these two sticks, these two pieces of wood, and you have to work with them, right? And so the metaphor, the analogy of starting a friction fire is like what you should be doing in your meditation every day. Okay. You have to take the topics and taking them to your meditation cushion is like rubbing those two pieces of wood together. And then they say that eventually what happens is that you have an insight, some sort of a realization, what they call tokpa. Okay. And then that starts this process of having a, so you can think like I'm drinking tea, right? Or like pouring milk in water. When you pour milk in water, you can't separate it again, can you? If I pour some milk into a glass of water, they become one thing. And this is the process of what's called chula chu shakpa. They say that that's how you describe seeing emptiness directly. It's like pouring water into water. Okay. You can't separate it. So that's what you're trying to do with these topics on your meditation cushion. You're trying to pour those topics into your mind so that they become inseparable. And you were a different person before and after that experience. Okay. So yogic direct perception is meant to give you like an update, right? Like we all have software on our computer. Yeah. And sometimes these applications have to be updated. Okay. You can think of your consciousness or your awareness much in the same way. And these meditational topics are meant to be updates, okay, for your consciousness. All right. Does that all make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, um, yeah, so that's a little bit about yogic direct perception. I think, yeah, and stop me here. Have we gone over, or do we have more time?
Yeah, 10 more minutes.
Okay, 10 more minutes. Sorry about that. I do have some slides and some lecture material kind of developed here. I did want to make a couple of comments before we move into this. Um, so one of the things I'm trying to do as we move forward, and like I said, I'm hoping that these classes go on for many years. Okay. So this is the second class of something that I hope will last for many, many years. Okay. I don't plan on stopping this. I plan to go indefinitely. Okay. And one of the things that you're going to have to bear with me if you come back from week to week over the first few classes, um, I'm trying to get a gauge for exactly how to present the material. Okay. I've been sharing this with Juan, and I had an idea of what I thought I wanted to share with you guys. And I'm redefining exactly how I want to present the material. So, over the next couple classes, I ask you to please keep coming back, but also to keep in mind that I'm still working on myself as we go through. Okay. Um, so, one of the things that I want to get an idea from you guys as we move into the next few classes is just tell me if the material that we're presenting, or at least that I'm going to present, Juan is doing an excellent job. Um, from my perspective, I need to know if you guys think it's too in depth or if it's too detailed. Okay. I was planning to present this like a master's level course, like a graduate level course, as somebody would at a university or a college. Um, that would require that we go pretty slow and we cover a lot of terms and we really spend time with each topic from week to week. We're going to try it that way, but if you feel that you're not getting anything out of it, please tell me, okay, so that I can reevaluate how it is that I'm presenting things. What was the next thing? Yeah, so once again, I'm still getting used to developing course material. Um, I've been in recent times and over the years, I've presented what Geshe Michael has taught me. Okay. And I'm now developing my own course material. So that's kind of why I'm asking you guys to give me a little grace here. Okay. Moving forward. So, I'm trying to, as much as I can, to make things like everyday language, something that we all can understand generally. Um, but like was saying, and that's why I thought it was very beautiful that Juan suggested that I maybe talk about yogic direct perception, right? Um, is that what we're going to do is we're going to study how the second school developed. Like, why did Master Dharmakirti um, say the things that he was saying? And we're going to identify the arguments that he was debating against. Okay, the ideas that he was trying to stop. Okay, from spreading. Okay, and I think one of the reasons I'm choosing to spend time, and over the next class or two, we're going to spend time looking at the ancient Indian schools that he was debating against, is because I think we will all identify with some of those ancient schools. Okay. So what we will learn is that we are holding certain wrong ideas that we will see in some of the ancient schools that Master Dharmakirti was debating against. So we will come to learn how to identify when we're misperceiving reality based on whether or not some of our ideas are shared with some of these ancient Indian schools. Okay. Um, Interpreters, am I in translators, am I doing any better? Going slowly? Okay, I'm trying as hard as I can. Okay. Um, yeah, so also from now on, we have 4 more minutes. So I didn't get into any of the material that I prepared for today. We have 4 more minutes, okay? From week to week, okay? Um, join the Telegram group, okay? Join the WhatsApp group. I think Juan could probably share a link maybe or a QR code here to do so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop a PowerPoint, okay, that I'm going to build from week to week. So maybe in a year from now, we might have 300, 400, 500 slides, okay? But from week to week, I'm going to update it and I'm going to put that slideshow, that PowerPoint in the WhatsApp and the Telegram group, okay? I'm going to develop some homeworks, but you don't have to do them if you don't want to. Okay. This is only if you want to make sure that you're retaining things from week to week. And I'm also going to put new Sanskrit and Tibetan vocabulary in the WhatsApp and Telegram, just so you can have it if you want it. Okay. If not, that's totally fine. But I ask you to all please keep coming because I think you'll get something out of it. Okay. I'm going to spend a lot of time from week to week developing stuff, and I hope that it will be used for years to come, for many generations. So that's why I'm going to give it my full attention. Um, okay, now we have 3 minutes, but I'll just show briefly here. Let's say. Uh, Okay, so I'm going to share this PowerPoint here, and we're going to look at this is an introduction, but we're going to look at um, what we're going to cover next week. Uh, let's see, from current slide, and okay, which one are you guys seeing? Are you seeing the?
Week one, understanding who knows why knowing matters.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I was going to split this into 2 classes. Okay, so that's why it says week one. Um, okay, here. So we're going to be looking at why these traditions matter. Okay, and understanding that it's not just about learning factual kind of information. It's really about understanding how we think about things. So it's less memorization and more thinking. Okay. So the only way these things are really going to change the way that you think is if you meditate on them or if you think about them as you're walking around in everyday life. Okay. So it's helpful, as everybody has probably learned since they've been studying with Geshe Michael, is that you don't just leave these things on your meditation cushion. You don't just leave them in class. You have to take them and think about them in everyday life. And I found that they tend to stick in my mind a little better when I'm thinking about them throughout my day. So, traditions, right? When I say traditions, I mean like how what does our culture hold? Okay? What does our culture hold to be true? Okay? In America and in the West, there's a saying that you have to look out for number one. Okay? And what that means is you have to look out for yourself. Okay? Does that make sense? In English, there's a phrase that says you have to look out for number one, which means that you only take care of yourself and you make sure that you have everything you need. Okay. That's a tradition. That's a cultural belief. Okay. And we have to unlearn those things. Okay. And so we have to deprogram ourselves. Um, so, instead of trying to be kind of neutral, we can learn how to step into other worldviews. Okay. So instead of just saying, okay, I'm a I'm a student of Geshe Michael and I follow Buddhism, and I'm just going to hold those beliefs because it's what Geshe Michael has told me is true. Okay. That's really not going to help you get very far, right? It's helpful to understand the wrong ideas. Okay. And this is why Jetson Kappa, Arya Nagarjuna, Master Chantakirti, they form arguments against how things exist, right? So that's why it's helpful to look at wrong ideas. Okay. It might not make sense because you think to yourself, I don't want to learn these wrong ideas because maybe they stick. Maybe the wrong ideas stick and the correct ideas I confuse. Okay. So, once again, this can help us see how this knowledge, the things that we learn in this class, are connected to how we grow and how we're going to improve the quality of our consciousness. Okay. So does that make sense, everybody? Yeah. Yeah. Is it boring? Is it fun? Is it interesting? Um, okay. Yeah. So I went over I think like 50 minutes or something last week. Um, yeah. So we went pretty long last week. So we're gonna call it right there. I've got a bunch of slides after this. Um, and this is kind of what I was planning on hitting today. So if you can give me just a few more minutes, just maybe 2 minutes, um, I kind of wanted to introduce what we're going to talk about next week. Okay. So we're going to look at the differences between the Nyaya school means logic. Okay. Nyaya means logic in Sanskrit. So the Nyaya was a school uh, of philosophy in ancient India that some of the Hindu practitioners followed. Uh, Nyaya literally means the reasoning school, the school of reasoning. So Master Dharmakirti actually um, actually believes or follows some of the things that the Nyaya school believed. So some of the ideas that the Nyaya school held, Master Dharmakirti also holds. But there are also certain ideas that the Nyaya school hold that Master Dharmakirti is going to debate against. Okay. So the big thing that we're going to be moving through with here is what can we accept to be real? Okay. This is crucial. All right. So if we're going to say that yogic direct perception is going to help you see ultimate reality directly, okay, we have to understand what makes something real in relation to it being either ultimate or deceptive, right? So that's gonna I really want you guys to maybe spend the next week just thinking about what does it mean for something to be real? Okay. Is something like a coffee cup real? Okay. How does your mind tie all the parts together of that coffee cup? The bottom, the top, the sides, okay, the handle, right? And if something is created by the mind using an archetype or a mental image, does that make it less real or more real? Are things like coffee cups, actual coffee cups, any more real than your idea of a coffee cup, your mental image of a coffee cup? Okay. Or are these two things equally real? Right. So as we move into next week, really think about, what does it mean for something to be real? Once again, are actual coffee cups real? Are mental images of coffee cups real? Or are they both equally real? Okay. That's kind of going to be the important thing that we're going to look at moving forward. So I did have a meditation that I wanted to do with you guys today, that was going to drive that home, but we'll save that for next week. And I really appreciate you guys coming. And I see some interesting. Oh, Barbara's working out. All right. Yeah. Get the body moving. Yeah. I really appreciate you guys all coming. Sometimes when I see the faces out there, I can't tell if I'm being boring or if it's interesting. So, and you're just thinking, okay? But once again, just come back, please. Okay? Keep coming back, right?
And also, I want to encourage everyone to share your questions if you have, I don't know, things that sometimes I like that. Like, I always wanted to know this, and I've been holding a question for a while. And sometimes it takes, to me, at least my experience, like sometimes I have to ask many people many times in different. So if you have questions, I will say just ask them. And what do you think, Adam? We can use those questions as well to develop content.
Yeah. Yeah, of
Knowing what the audience wants to know about, or a particular question or a confusion. Sometimes,
Yeah.
now that I'm a little into the, how to say, MC job sometimes,
Yeah.
I realize that many times your questions can be also one of the greatest forms of contribution. We sometimes it's not about that how much we know, but just asking the right questions opens up the flow of the sessions. So sometimes I invite people to speak and they say, no, I don't know what to say. And I say, if you don't know what to say, just ask your questions and
Yeah.
let others try to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like I said, I feel better when I hear you guys talk. I don't feel like I'm on a stage or something. I feel more comfortable when I hear people talking. You don't have to, don't feel like I'm forcing you to, but I definitely encourage you to speak and to interact if you want to. Okay.
Cool. So thank you so much, Adam, and also the translators.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
thought I was speaking slower this time, but maybe not. I hope yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And next session, I really, as Adam say, I would like to try this. As I say, I'm gonna share the first debate on the text, and then think about what each of the paragraphs or each one of the, how you call those things, lines or verses.
Yeah. A section. Yeah.
Yeah, each one of the sections can teach you. If you could even do the exercise to make notes, and then we share. It will be even very cool if people want to present, like, okay, here is what I learned from section 1, section 2, section 3, and then we move to another person that wants to share what they learned from section. You'll be surprised, and then the more we go dive into the debates, you'll start realizing more and more things. It's like then we start moving into the secondary colors, and you start learning what are the secondary colors, and it's like so much in every one of the lines. You'll be surprised. Okay, cool. Anybody, anything? No, we're ready to start the day.
Isn't that what everybody's doing
Yeah,
now?
that's great. It's a new
Yeah.
thing. And these two, no,
Yeah.
this one gives the balloons,
Yeah.
and this one
Are you serious? Like the thumbs
this
up?
one does something too, but I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. See you next time. We're
Yeah.
gonna share materials with you on the chats. Oh
Bye,
yeah,
guys.
thank you translators, and thank you recording people.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
balloons. Nah.